Biblical weddings, whether they're in parables or not, are just plain confusing. With our dependence on electricity and reserving venues and RSVPs and strict scheduling, most of us end up searching for clues to understand the whats and whys of these weddings from the ancient world. Things that apparently held deep significance for New Testament authors make no sense to us, leaving us lost in regard to what actually the point is. I haven't been able to find many sources that give a solid background of wedding practices common in first century Palestine, but one based on observations from modern Near Eastern communities in more isolated and traditional areas emphasize that weddings typically take place in the fall and the winter. And with that extra darkness, every guest is expected to bring candles or lamps to provide symbolic joy and very real light to the house where the marriage will take place. With the whole community gathered and waiting, there's little to no point in trying to go purchase more candles or fuel. The shops are all closed because the sellers are themselves getting ready for the party. Additionally, houses tend to be relatively small, so once that initial round of guests arrives or space starts getting tight, those inside lock the door, whereupon the celebration continues for days on end. Due to the noise, no one can really hear the latecomers knocking, and even if they did, the groom is way too busy hosting the other guests to greet those who hadn't bothered to prepare properly in the first place. Based on those cultural norms and expectations, the lesson of the parable seems pretty simple. Don't wait until the last minute. Do like a Boy Scout and just be prepared. Or as Jesus states in our final verse, keep awake. Alert, really, all of the ladies had fallen asleep. Keep alert, therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour. If that's the case, there really isn't a whole lot more for us to talk about. Everybody, just make sure you're always ready for the arrival of God's kingdom. Pack some extra oil, whatever that might be. Keep what you have for yourself, and everything will be good. Now, I suppose the parable could be that simple, but something feels off about that interpretation. I keep wondering if there isn't more here for us to consider. Like, what if Jesus wasn't saying the 5 virgins were foolish simply because they weren't prepared? What if having lights or not wasn't the point? What if they were foolish because they left? What if their real problem was their pride, their self-focused unwillingness for other people to think that they might have been foolish? Working through the text this week, that idea doesn't seem out of line. The way that the 5 talk and behave, they sound more like what we would consider to be entitled rather than what we would think of as simply foolish. The manner they address the wise virgins, and that adjective really should be more along the lines of thoughtful or sensible. It doesn't have that idea of some sort of special knowledge or sagacity or something like that. The way that they address them, it doesn't read as a question or a request. I couldn't see any suggestions of respectful or polite phrasing. It's just a straight up demand. You all, give us out of your olive oil. Their later words to the groom come across similarly. Honestly, it feels to me a lot like one of those reality TV moments. A scene where one particular contestant makes a mistake or actively offends everybody else in the house and then starts accusing the others of mistreating them. You can practically hear them huffing and muttering as they run off to the store. Can you believe those 5? They're so selfish, completely inconsiderate. If they're so smart, why didn't they bring enough oil for everybody? And not noticing that we hadn't made it back yet? Rude. We need to leave 1-star reviews of them and the wedding. Jerks. Now, I wonder how the story might have gone if they'd owned up to their errors instead of demanding that others fix them. What if one of them had admitted their mistake and asked if they could walk with one of the others or come in with them as part of the group? What if they had combined their remaining oil so that they would have had enough to keep at least one of their lamps burning? Not being familiar with the culture, we can't know for sure, but I doubt the host would worry too much about a few missing flames. They would have already prepared days' worth of light and fuel. And honestly, who really cares what someone else is bringing? After all, the point of the wedding celebration is the celebration itself. Enjoyment is what matters most. People are focused on the party, not on what somebody else may or may not have done in advance. Any initial awkwardness would quickly fade as the festivities began to unfold. So then, what if that is the same with us? What if God's kingdom is welcoming us, but we're simply too proud to enter? What if, in our attempts to look good to others, who probably aren't paying nearly as much attention to us as we want to think they are, we end up missing out on the joy and fellowship available for all? What if we could be humble enough to walk in someone else's light? What if instead of demanding that everyone cater to our wants and needs, we trust the graciousness of the host and realize that there will be enough light for all? What if we simply need to risk looking foolish in order to join in the fun? Amen.